Marcus Hayes's calloused hands were wrapped around a dying woman's ribcage when his entire world shifted. One moment she was turning blue under the chandelier lights. The next, she was gasping for air alive because he refused to stand by and watch. He thought that was the end of it, a good deed, a grateful nod, nothing more. But 3 days later, when a black Mercedes pulled up to his crumbling apartment building, and that same woman stepped out holding an envelope that would change everything, Marcus realized some debts can never be repaid with a simple thank you. Comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The shrimp hit the marble floor with a wet slap, and the room finally exhaled. Marcus Hayes stood behind the woman, his arms still locked around her ribs, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. She bent forward, hands braced against the white tablecloth, coughing so violently the silverware rattled. Her long, dark hair fell across her face like a curtain, hiding whatever expression lived there. Relief, shock, maybe terror at how close she'd come. Around them, the ballroom came back to life in fractured pieces. Someone clapped, then another person. Then a scattered applause that felt more like obligation than celebration. Marcus barely heard it. He was too focused on making sure she could breathe that her airway was clear, that she wasn't going to collapse the second he let go. "Ma'am." His voice came out rougher than he intended. "You okay?" She straightened slowly, one hand still pressed to her throat. When she finally looked at him, her eyes were wet and wide, mascara smudged at the corners. She was younger than he'd thought from across the room, maybe late 30s, early 40s, with the kind of face that belonged in magazine spreads, not choking on appetizers at a corporate holiday party. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, trying again. "I couldn't breathe." "I know. You're okay now. Just take it slow." She nodded, but her hands were shaking. Marcus noticed the champagne flute on its side liquid spreading across the table like spilled mercury. He noticed the way people were staring not at her, but at him. At his borrowed sport coat that didn't quite fit across the shoulders. At his work boots because he didn't own dress shoes. At his black skin in a room full of people who wrote checks with more zeros than his annual salary. A man in a tuxedo appeared, all smooth concern and expensive cologne. "Ms. Castellano, should we call an ambulance?" "No." She waved him off, still catching her breath. "No, I'm fine. I just—" She looked at Marcus again. Really looked at him this time. "You saved my life." "Anyone would have done the same." "No." The word came out sharp, certain. "They wouldn't have." Marcus glanced around the ballroom. 50 people, maybe more. Every single one had watched her choking. Watched her turn red, then purple. Watched her eyes go wide with panic. And every single one had frozen like statues, like this was happening on a screen instead of 3 feet in front of them. "Well," Marcus said, uncomfortable with the weight of her gratitude, "I'm just glad you're all right." He started to step back, to disappear into the crowd, before anyone asked questions he didn't want to answer. But she caught his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong for someone who'd almost died 60 seconds ago. "Wait, please. I don't even know your name." "Marcus. Marcus Hayes." "Elena Castellano." She offered her hand, formal despite everything. "Thank you, Marcus Hayes. I mean it. Thank you." Her hand was soft against his calloused palm. He shook it once, then let go. "You should sit down. Drink some water. I should buy you a drink, or dinner, or—" She laughed, a little breathless, a little hysterical. "God, I don't even know what you're supposed to do when someone saves your life." "You don't have to do anything." "I want to." Marcus shook his head. "I've got to get home. My daughter's with the neighbor and I'm already late." Something shifted in Elena's expression, understanding, maybe respect. She reached into a small clutch purse and pulled out a business card, plain white with embossed gold lettering. "Then take this, please. If you ever need anything, you call me. I mean it." Marcus took the card, because refusing felt ruder than accepting. Elena Castellano, CEO Castellano Properties. A phone number with too many digits to be local. I'm serious. Elena said, her voice dropping lower, more intense. Anything. A favor, a job, whatever you need. You saved my life tonight. That's not something I forget. Marcus nodded, tucked the card into his jacket pocket, and walked away before the conversation could go anywhere else. Behind him, he heard the tuxedo man fussing over Elena, heard her dismissive responses, heard the party slowly returning to its rhythm of clinking glasses and polite laughter. He made it to the coat check, collected his jacket, the good one, the one he wore to funerals and job interviews, and pushed through the hotel's revolving doors into the Atlanta night. The air outside was cool, almost cold, carrying that specific December bite that made his breath fog. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the adrenaline drain out of his system, feeling the shakes start in his hands now that the emergency was over. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, his downstairs neighbor. Zoe's asleep. Take your time. He texted back. On my way. Thanks. Marcus walked toward the parking deck, past valets smoking cigarettes, past luxury cars that cost more than his yearly rent. His truck was on the 4th level, rusted at the wheel wells, a crack spreading across the windshield that he kept meaning to fix but never had the money for. He climbed in, started the engine. It coughed twice before catching, and sat there in the dim parking deck light, staring at nothing. The business card felt heavy in his pocket. Elena Castellano. He'd heard the name before, seen it on billboards across Atlanta. Castellano Properties owned half the city's skyline, developed neighborhoods that pushed out people like him, built condos that started at prices he couldn't even imagine. And he'd just saved her life. Marcus pulled the card out, studied it under the dome light. The gold lettering caught the glow, almost shimmering. On the back, handwritten in elegant script, I mean it. Call me. E. He should throw it away. Toss it out the window. Let it blow across the parking deck. Forget this whole night ever happened. Women like Elena Castellano didn't mix with men like Marcus Hayes. They existed in different universes, crossing paths only in moments like this, brief, forgettable, ultimately meaningless. But he didn't throw it away. He slipped it back into his wallet, tucked between his driver's license and a photo of Zoe losing her first tooth, and drove home. The apartment was dark when he got back, just the kitchen light left on like always. Mrs. Chen had already gone downstairs. Marcus checked the locks, peeked into Zoe's room. She was sprawled across her twin bed covers, kicked off her stuffed elephant, clutched under one arm, and carefully pulled the blanket back over her. She stirred, mumbled something that sounded like, "Daddy, I'm home, baby, go back to sleep." She settled, breathing evening out again. Marcus stood there for a moment watching her. 8 years old, gap-toothed and brilliant and stubborn as hell. The best thing that ever happened to him, even if she came from the worst relationship of his life. Zoe's mother had left when she was 3. No warning, no explanation. Just walked out one afternoon while Marcus was at work and never came back. He'd found a note on the kitchen table. I can't do this. I'm sorry. That was it. 3 years of radio silence. No birthday cards, no child support. No custody battles because she'd never bothered to show up for court. So Marcus had done it alone. Worked construction and then moved to maintenance at an apartment complex because the hours were steadier. Packed Zoe's lunches and braided her hair badly at first, then better, and showed up to every parent-teacher conference, even when he had to leave work early and lose pay. He was all she had. And she was all he had. Marcus closed her door gently and walked to the kitchen. The eviction notice was still on the counter where he'd left it that morning, next to a stack of bills he was juggling like grenades with pulled pins. 60 days. That's what the letter said. The building was being sold, converted to luxury condos. Current tenants could reapply, but the new rent would be triple what he paid now. Triple. He'd already called 5 different apartment complexes. All of them wanted first month, last month, and a deposit he didn't have. All of them wanted to run credit checks that would come back with red flags and rejections. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table, dropped his head into his hands. The business card was still in his wallet. "If you ever need anything, you call me." He pulled out his phone, stared at the screen. It would be so easy. One call. One conversation. Maybe Elena Castellano could help him find a place. Pull some strings. Make a phone call that would open doors his name alone couldn't. But that felt like begging, like confirming every stereotype about who he was and what he wanted. Marcus turned off his phone and went to bed. 3 days passed. Marcus went to work, fixed a water heater in Unit 12B, replaced a garbage disposal in 7A, listened to his boss complain about the new ownership and how they were cleaning house, bringing in their own maintenance crew. "I can't promise anything past January," his boss said, not quite meeting Marcus's eyes. "They want their own people." Marcus nodded. Didn't argue. What was the point? He picked up Zoe from school. She climbed into the truck backpack, nearly as big as she was, and immediately launched into a story about her friend Mia's birthday party and how they were going to see a movie, but Marcus would have to drive them because Mia's mom didn't have a car big enough. "When's the party?" Marcus asked. "Saturday. Can we go?" "Please." "We'll see." "That means no." "That means we'll see." Zoe huffed, dramatic in that way only 8-year-olds could manage. "You never let me do anything fun. I let you eat ice cream for breakfast last Sunday. That was one time, and you said it was because the power went out and the freezer was melting. Still counts." She grinned at that, her mood shifting like a light switch. "Can we get McDonald's?" "We got McDonald's yesterday." "So I'm a growing child. I need nutrients." Marcus laughed, despite everything. "Since when do chicken McNuggets have nutrients? They have protein. You know what else has protein? The leftovers in the fridge." Zoe groaned like he'd sentenced her to prison. But when they got home, she helped him heat up the leftover spaghetti without complaint. They ate at the kitchen table, the eviction notice now buried under junk mail Marcus hadn't sorted through, and Zoe told him about her science project on volcanoes and how she wanted to make it explode with baking soda and vinegar. "We can do that," Marcus said. "This weekend. Promise. Promise." She smiled satisfied and went to work on her homework while Marcus washed dishes and pretended he wasn't calculating how much money he had left until the next paycheck. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Marcus stood in the kitchen staring at his wallet on the counter. The business card was right there. One phone call away. His pride said no. His daughter's future said yes. Marcus picked up his phone, dialed before he could talk himself out of it. It rang twice. "This is Elena." Her voice was crisp, professional, like she was still at the office, even though it was nearly 10 at night. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "It's Marcus Hayes, from the party, 3 days ago." The professional tone evaporated instantly. "Marcus, oh my God, I was hoping you'd call." "Yeah, well, I'm calling." Silence. Then, "What do you need? Straight to business, no small talk." He appreciated that. "I need—" He stopped, started over. "Look, I'm not asking for a handout, but you said if I ever needed anything, name it." Marcus exhaled. "I'm about to lose my apartment. Building's being sold converted. I can't afford the new rent. I got a kid and I need to find somewhere stable before we're out on the street." More silence, but not the uncomfortable kind, the thinking kind. "Can you meet tomorrow?" Elena asked. 10 a.m., my office." "I got work." "Take a personal day. This is important." "I can't just—" "Marcus." Her voice was firm, almost commanding. "Take the day. Meet me. Let me help. Please." He wanted to argue, wanted to say he could handle it himself, that he didn't need her charity, that he was fine. But he wasn't fine, and Zoe deserved better than his pride. "Okay," Marcus said finally. 10 a.m., where Elena gave him an address downtown. A building he'd seen 100 times, but never entered because it was the kind of place that had security desks and people in suits who looked at you like you didn't belong. "Thank you," Marcus said. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't heard what I'm offering." She hung up before he could ask what that meant. Marcus stood in his kitchen phone, still in his hand, and wondered if he'd just made the best decision of his life or the worst mistake. The Castellano building was glass and steel, reaching into the Atlanta sky like a middle finger to gravity. Marcus stood on the sidewalk outside, feeling distinctly out of place in his work jeans and cleanest flannel shirt. A security guard inside watched him through the glass doors. Marcus took a breath, pushed through. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of space that echoed when you walked. The security desk was staffed by 2 men in blazers who looked like they moonlighted as bouncers. "Can I help you?" The first guard's tone made it clear he was used to removing people who didn't belong. "I have a meeting. With Elena Castellano." The guard's eyebrow raised. "Name? Marcus Hayes." He checked his computer, surprise flickering across his face. "ID." Marcus handed over his driver's license. The guard studied it like he was looking for forgery, then passed it back. 40th floor. Elevators are on your right." The elevator was the kind that made your ears pop. Marcus watched the numbers climb each floor, ticking by with a soft ding. When the doors finally opened on 40, he stepped out into a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. A woman sat behind a curved desk, her smile professional but warm. "Mr. Hayes." "Yeah." "Ms. Castellano is expecting you. Right this way." She led him down a hallway lined with photographs, buildings, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, and stopped at a set of double doors. "Go ahead in." Marcus pushed through. Elena's office was corner-facing, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a view of Atlanta that made him dizzy. She stood by one of those windows, phone pressed to her ear, but turned when he entered. "I'll call you back." She hung up without waiting for a response. "Marcus, thank you for coming." She looked different than she had at the party. Still polished, still expensive, but somehow more real. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Minimal makeup. Blazer and slacks instead of an evening gown. "Nice view," Marcus said, because he didn't know what else to say. "It's better at night." Elena gestured to a conference table near the windows. "Sit, please." He sat. She sat across from him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "You said you're losing your apartment," Elena started. 60 days. And you have a daughter. Zoe. She's 8. Elena nodded like she was filing that information away. "I have 15 properties across Atlanta. Older buildings. I'm renovating them, turning them into affordable housing. Not luxury, not market rate, actually affordable." Marcus waited. "I need someone to oversee the renovations. Someone who knows construction, who can manage crews, who can solve problems without calling me every 5 minutes. I do maintenance, not project management. But you know buildings. You know what breaks and how to fix it. And more importantly," Elena leaned forward, "I trust you. You don't even know me. I know you saved my life when 50 other people just watched. I know you didn't ask for anything in return. That tells me everything I need to know." Marcus shook his head. "This feels like what, charity?" Elena's voice sharpened. "It's not. I need someone for this job. Someone good. Someone reliable. You need work and housing. This solves both our problems." "What's the salary?" She slid a folder across the table. Marcus opened it. Read the number 3 times to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. "That's..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Industry standard for a project manager. Plus full benefits, health insurance for you and your daughter, and housing in one of the renovated units rent-free while you're working on the project." Marcus stared at the paper. The number was more than triple what he made now. The health insurance alone would cover Zoe's asthma medication, her inhalers the specialist appointments he'd been putting off because the copays were too high. Why? The question came out harsher than he intended. Why me? You could hire anyone. People with degrees, with experience, with... Because 3 days ago you acted when everyone else froze. Because you didn't hesitate. Because you saw someone who needed help, and you helped them, even though it wasn't your job, even though you didn't know who I was. Elena's voice softened. I've spent 10 years building this company, Marcus. I've worked with hundreds of people. The ones with the fancy degrees. Half of them can't make a decision without 3 meetings and a consultant. The ones with experience, they're stuck in old ways, can't adapt. What I need is someone who thinks fast, acts faster, and gives a damn about doing the right thing. Marcus looked at the contract again. At the salary. At the benefits. At the clause that said housing included. At the chance to give Zoe stability, security, a future that didn't involve choosing between rent and groceries. One condition, Marcus said. Elena raised an eyebrow. Name it. I earn this. I do the work, I get the pay. But if I screw up, if I'm not good enough, you fire me. No favors, no special treatment. Deal. Elena smiled. Deal. She extended her hand across the table. Marcus shook it. And somewhere deep in his chest, something that had been clenched tight for 3 years finally loosened. Marcus signed the contract that afternoon, his signature looking small and uncertain next to Elena's bold scrawl. She made 2 copies, handed him one, and shook his hand again, with that same firm grip that suggested she'd built her empire through sheer force of will. You start Monday, Elena said. I'll have my assistant send over the details. First property is in East Atlanta. 3-story walk-up, needs everything from plumbing to paint. I'll be there. Good. She walked him to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Marcus, thank you for saying yes. I should be thanking you. Then we're even. But they both knew that wasn't true. Marcus owed her nothing except good work. She owed him her life. The math didn't balance, would never balance, and something about that sat wrong in his chest as he rode the elevator back down to street level. He picked up Zoe from school that afternoon, and she climbed into the truck chattering about her day, about how her teacher said her volcano project was the best in class, about how Tommy Patterson tried to put gum in Sarah Miller's hair and got sent to the principal's office. Daddy, you're smiling weird, Zoe said, suddenly cutting off mid-story. Am I? Yeah, like when you're trying not to tell me something good. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Too smart for her own good, that kid. Got it from her grandmother, not from him or her mother. I got a new job. Zoe's eyes went wide. Really, doing what? Managing construction projects. For a company downtown. Is it better than fixing toilets? Marcus laughed. Yeah, baby. It's better than fixing toilets. Does it pay more? A lot more. Can we get a puppy? Slow down, let me start the job first. But Zoe was already planning, already dreaming, and Marcus didn't have the heart to tell her that puppies were still probably out of budget even with the raise. Maybe in 6 months, after he proved himself, after the paychecks cleared and the health insurance kicked in, and he was sure this wasn't some fever dream he'd wake up from. They celebrated that night with pizza, the good kind, from the place that didn't use cardboard for crust. Zoe ate 3 slices and fell asleep on the couch halfway through a Disney movie, tomato sauce dried at the corner of her mouth. Marcus carried her to bed, tucked her in with her elephant, and stood in the doorway watching her breathe. 7 days ago, his biggest worry was making rent. Now he had a job that paid real money, benefits that meant Zoe could see a doctor without him calculating the cost, and housing that meant they wouldn't be on the street come February. All because he'd wrapped his arms around a choking stranger and squeezed. Life was strange that way. Monday morning came cold and gray, the kind of Atlanta winter day that made you question why you didn't move somewhere warmer. Marcus dropped Zoe at school early, kissed her forehead, and promised he'd pick her up on time. Then he drove to East Atlanta, following the GPS to an address that turned out to be a 3-story brick building with boarded windows and graffiti across the ground floor. A work truck was already parked out front. 2 men stood by the tailgate drinking coffee from thermoses, their breath fogging in the cold air. They looked up when Marcus pulled in, their expressions shifting from casual to guarded. Marcus got out, extended his hand. "Marcus Hayes, I'm managing the renovation." The older of the 2 men, maybe 50 with gray threading through his beard, shook Marcus's hand with the grip of someone who'd spent his life swinging hammers. "Rick Morrison. This is my son Danny." Danny nodded, didn't offer his hand. His eyes traveled over Marcus. His work boots, his worn Carhartt jacket, his black skin, and Marcus saw the question forming before it was asked. "You're the project manager," Danny said. "How old are you?" 38. "You got experience with commercial renovation. I've got 10 years in construction and maintenance. I know buildings. I know what breaks and how to fix it." Danny's jaw tightened. "No offense, but Ms. Castellano usually hires people with degrees for jobs like this." "Danny." Rick's voice carried a warning. "I'm just saying." "I know what you're saying," Marcus cut in, keeping his tone level. "And you're right. I don't have a degree. I've got experience and I've got work ethic. If that's not good enough, you can call Ms. Castellano and tell her yourself." Rick's eyes flickered with something that might have been respect. "We're good." Danny grabbed the plans from the truck. Danny did reluctantly and spread them across the tailgate. The building was a mess inside. Rick walked Marcus through the scope, pointing out where walls needed to come down, where plumbing had to be rerouted, where the electrical was so old it was basically a fire waiting to happen. "Timeline's aggressive," Rick said. 12 weeks start to finish. Can it be done? If we don't hit surprises, old buildings always have surprises. Marcus studied the plans, committing them to memory. "What do you need from me?" "Decisions when problems come up, access to funds for materials, and to keep Ms. Castellano off my back when things take longer than the pretty timeline says." "I can do that." They shook on it. Danny still looked skeptical, but he kept his mouth shut this time. Marcus spent the morning inside the building, walking through each floor with a flashlight and a notebook. The place smelled like mold and decay, like something that had been abandoned too long and given up hope anyone would care again. But underneath the rot he could see the bones-high ceilings, good light from the windows, solid brick construction that would last another 100 years if someone bothered to save it. He took notes, made sketches, started a list of questions for Elena about finishes and fixtures, and whether she wanted to preserve any of the original details. His phone rang just after noon, Elena's name on the screen. "How's the first day?" she asked without preamble. "Building's worse than the plans suggest. Foundation's good, but everything else needs work. Can Rick handle it?" "He knows his stuff. His son's got an attitude, but nothing I can't manage." Elena laughed. "Danny gives everyone an attitude. Don't take it personally." "I don't." "Good. I'm sending my assistant by with keys to your new place. It's Unit 2B in the building on Monroe. Fully furnished, move-in ready. You can transfer this weekend." Marcus stopped walking. "That fast?" "That fast. Unless you want to wait until your eviction notice runs out." No, this is thank you. Stop thanking me and start making that building beautiful." She hung up before he could respond. Marcus stood in the empty second-floor hallway, dust motes floating through the weak sunlight, and felt that tight thing in his chest loosen another degree. The weekend came with chaos that only moving could bring. Mrs. Chen helped pack while Zoe supervised, which mostly meant she sat on boxes and asked questions about the new apartment every 30 seconds. "Does it have a dishwasher?" "Yes." "What about a balcony?" "I don't know." "Can I paint my room purple?" "We'll see." "That means no." Marcus taped up another box. "That means we'll see." The new building was in a better neighborhood, the kind where people walked dogs at night, and kids played basketball in the street. Unit 2B was on the second floor, just like Elena said, and when Marcus unlocked the door, Zoe pushed past him and gasped. "It's huge!" It wasn't huge, but compared to their old place, it was a mansion. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom that didn't have mold in the corners, a kitchen with appliances that all worked at the same time. The furniture was simple but clean, couch table beds with actual frames instead of mattresses on the floor. Zoe ran from room to room, her voice echoing off walls that didn't have water stains. "Can this be my room? It has 2 windows and a closet that's bigger than our old bathroom." Marcus followed her, overwhelmed by the space, by the light, by the fact that this was theirs for as long as he kept doing his job. No landlord threatening eviction. No rent eating 70% of his paycheck. Just space to breathe. "Yeah, baby," Marcus set his throat tight. "That can be your room." Zoe threw her arms around his waist. "This is the best day ever." Marcus hugged her back, his chin resting on top of her head, and thought about Elena Castellano saving his life the same way he'd saved hers. They spent Sunday unpacking, and by Monday morning, the apartment almost felt like home. Marcus dropped Zoe at school, the same school, because he'd refused to move her mid-year, even though the commute was longer now, and headed to the job site. Rick's truck was already there along with Danny's and 3 other vehicles Marcus didn't recognize. He walked into controlled chaos the demo crew had started over the weekend, and the first floor was stripped to studs. Dust hung in the air like fog. Rick found him in what used to be the lobby. "Plumbing's worse than we thought. Whole system needs to be replaced, not just updated." "How much worse?" "Add 30 grand to the budget." Marcus pulled out his phone, texted Elena. Her response came back in seconds. "Approved, do it right." "We're good," Marcus told Rick. "Replace it all." The weeks fell into rhythm after that. Marcus arrived at 6, left at 4 to pick up Zoe, then answered calls and emails after she went to bed. The work was harder than maintenance, required more thinking and less muscle, but he was good at it. Solved problems as they came up, made decisions that kept the project moving, earned Rick's respect and even Danny's grudging acceptance. Elena visited the site every Wednesday like clockwork. She'd show up in jeans and a hard hat, tour the progress with Marcus, ask smart questions that proved she understood construction better than most people who signed checks for it. "You're doing good work," she said during the 3rd week, standing in what would eventually be the lobby. "Rick's doing the work. I'm just keeping him funded." "Don't sell yourself short. He told me you caught a structural issue with the 3rd floor joists before they started the demo. Saved us from a collapse." Marcus shrugged. "Just doing my job." "Nin, you're doing more than that." Elena turned to face him fully. "I want you to take on the next building. Spring Street. 6 units. Similar scope." "When?" "As soon as this one's finished." "That's a lot of trust for someone 2 months into the job." "I don't give trust easily. You've earned it." She left before Marcus could argue, her assistant trailing behind with a tablet and a phone pressed to her ear. That night, Zoe had a school concert. Marcus sat in the auditorium with other parents watching 3rd graders massacre Jingle Bells on recorders, and when Zoe's class filed onto the risers, she scanned the crowd until she found him. Her whole face lit up. She waved, too enthusiastic, and Marcus waved back, even though some dad behind him chuckled. After the concert, they went for ice cream, even though it was a school night. Zoe ordered chocolate chip with sprinkles and talked non-stop about her solo. She'd had one line played, one note that lasted 3 seconds, but to hear her tell it, she'd given a Grammy-worthy performance. "Did you see me?" Zoe asked for the 4th time. "I saw you, baby." "Was I good?" "You were perfect." She grinned, chocolate smeared on her chin. "Next year, I want a bigger part." "Then you'll practice, and you'll get one." They walked back to the truck, hand in hand, and Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just stability, not just security, but actual happiness, the kind that didn't come with an asterisk or an expiration date. His phone buzzed as he buckled Zoe into the back seat. A text from Elena. Free for coffee tomorrow morning before site visit. Want to discuss something? Marcus texted back, what time? 7 a.m. Corner grind on Peachtree. He confirmed, then drove home wondering what needed discussing in a coffee shop instead of on site. The Corner Grind was the kind of place that charged $8 for coffee and called it artisanal. Marcus arrived 5 minutes early, ordered black coffee that cost more than he wanted to admit, and found Elena already sitting in a corner booth. She looked tired. Not physically tired, but the kind of exhaustion that came from thinking too much from carrying weight that wasn't visible. Thanks for meeting, Elena said, as Marcus slid into the booth across from her. No problem. What's up? She wrapped both hands around her mug like she was trying to soak up the warmth. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you Google me? Marcus blinked. What? Do you ever search my name online, read articles, look at photos? No, should I? Most people do. Most people want to know who they're working for, what kind of person I am, what kind of reputation I have. I figured if you were awful, Rick would have warned me. Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm asking because there's something you should know. About me. About why I'm doing these projects. Marcus waited. 10 years ago, my father died. Heart attack at his desk, 63 years old. He left me the company Castellano Properties. Back then, we developed luxury condos, high-end retail, projects that made money but didn't make a difference. She paused, took a sip of coffee. After he died, I started looking at what we built, really looking. And I realized we were part of the problem. We were the ones pushing people out of their neighborhoods, pricing families out of the city, turning communities into playgrounds for rich people. So you changed direction. I tried to, but my board fought me. My investors threatened lawsuits. My own mother called me naive and told me I was destroying my father's legacy. Elena's voice hardened. It took 5 years, but I bought them all out. Every share. Took on debt I'm still paying off. But now the company's mine and I can do what I want with it. Which is affordable housing. Which is trying to undo some of the damage we caused. But she looked up, met Marcus's eyes. People still see me as the villain, the billionaire gentrifier. They protest outside my office, write op-eds about how I'm still part of the problem no matter what I claim I'm trying to fix. Marcus set his coffee down. Why are you telling me this? Because someone's going to tell you eventually. Someone's going to send you an article or show you a photo from a protest or repeat some rumor they heard. And I want you to hear the truth from me first. You think I'm going to quit. I think you might question whether you want to work for someone with my reputation. Marcus leaned back, studying her. The exhaustion made more sense now. She wasn't just tired from work. She was tired from fighting her own past, fighting public perception, fighting people who couldn't see past who she used to be to who she was trying to become. Can I tell you something? Marcus said. Please. I don't care what articles say. I don't care what protesters think. I care that you're paying me fairly, treating me with respect, and giving me a chance to provide for my daughter. Everything else is noise. Elena's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, looking away. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. You saved my daughter's future when you gave me this job. The way I see it, we're even now. We're not even close to even. Then stop keeping score. She laughed at that, a real laugh that broke the tension. They finished their coffee talking about the Spring Street project, about timelines and budgets, and whether the neighborhood would accept the development or protest it like they had others. Marcus left the coffee shop feeling like something had shifted. They weren't just boss and employee anymore. They were something closer to friends, or at least two people who understood what it meant to be judged for circumstances beyond their control. The East Atlanta building finished ahead of schedule. Rick and his crew worked overtime to get it done, and when Marcus did the final walkthrough, he felt pride in a way he hadn't since Zoe was born. The building was beautiful exposed brick, preserved modern fixtures, installed 6 units that would house families who'd been priced out of everything else. Elena scheduled a small ribbon cutting, just a few reporters and some community members. Marcus stood in the back, uncomfortable with the attention, but Elena insisted he be there. "This is your project too," she'd said. "You earned this." The reporters asked questions about costs, about timeline, about Elena's vision for affordable housing in Atlanta. Then one of them, a young guy with a tape recorder, turned to Marcus. "Mr. Hayes, what's it like working for Elena Castellano, given her family's history with displacement?" Marcus felt every eye in the room turned toward him. Rick had stopped mid-conversation. Danny's mouth hung open, and Elena stood frozen, her expression carefully neutral, waiting to see how he'd answer. "I'll tell you what it's like," Marcus said, his voice steady. "It's like working for someone who saw a problem and decided to fix it instead of making excuses. It's like working for someone who could have kept building luxury condos and getting richer, but chose to do something harder, something that actually helps people." He paused. "Everyone wants to talk about what Elena Castellano's family did years ago. I care about what she's doing now, and right now she's building homes for families who need them. That's all I need to know." The reporter scribbled notes. Elena's eyes met Marcus's across the room, and the gratitude there was so raw it almost hurt to see. After the ribbon cutting, after the reporters left, and the community members toured the units, Elena found Marcus standing outside smoking a cigarette he'd bummed off Rick. "I didn't know you smoked," Elena said. "I don't. Quit 5 years ago, but that reporter had me stressed." "You didn't have to defend me." "I wasn't defending you. I was telling the truth." Elena stood beside him, staring at the building they'd transformed. "My assistant compiled the headlines from today. Want to know what they're saying? Not really. They're saying I hired a token black project manager to make myself look good." Marcus took a drag, exhaled slowly. "And what do you say?" "I say they can think whatever they want. I know why I hired you. You know why I hired you. That's enough." "Good answer." They stood in silence, watching the sun set behind the building, painting the brick orange and gold. "Spring Street starts next month," Elena said eventually. "You ready?" "Born ready." She smiled at that, shook her head. "You're good at this, Marcus. Better than you give yourself credit for. I just show up and do the work. That's exactly why you're good at it." Elena left in her black Mercedes, and Marcus drove home in his rusted truck, and somehow the difference between them felt smaller than it had 3 months ago. Zoe was doing homework at the kitchen table when he walked in, her math book open, her pencil chewed on one end. "How was your day?" Marcus asked, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. "Boring. How was yours?" "I cut a ribbon." She looked up, interested. "Like with giant scissors?" "Exactly like that." "Cool. Can I do that sometime?" "Maybe when you're older." Zoe went back to her homework, and Marcus started dinner spaghetti again because it was easy, and Zoe never complained. While the water boiled, he checked his phone. 3 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize and a voicemail. He played it on speaker while stirring sauce. "Mr. Hayes, this is Rebecca Chen from Atlanta Family Services. We have some information regarding your daughter Zoe's biological mother. Please call me back at your earliest convenience." The wooden spoon clattered against the pot. Zoe looked up. "Daddy? You okay?" Marcus forced his face into something resembling normal. "Yeah, baby. Just clumsy." But his hands were shaking as he turned off the stove, and his heart was hammering as he stepped into the hallway and called the number back. Rebecca Chen answered on the second ring, her voice professional but not unkind. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for calling back. I understand this must be unexpected." Marcus pressed his back against the hallway wall, trying to keep his voice low enough that Zoe wouldn't hear from the kitchen. "What's this about?" "Your daughter's biological mother, Keisha Morris, has filed paperwork requesting supervised visitation rights." The petition was submitted 2 weeks ago, and we're required by law to notify you and schedule a hearing. The hallway tilted. Marcus closed his eyes, opened them, but nothing changed. The words were still hanging in the air between them, real and undeniable. She left 5 years ago. No calls, no birthday cards, nothing. I understand. That's something you'll be able to present at the hearing. But legally, if she's requesting contact and can demonstrate she's addressed whatever issues led to her absence. She didn't have issues. She just left, walked out on a 3-year-old because being a mother was too hard. Rebecca's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Mr. Hayes, I'm on your side here, but I need you to understand the court's perspective. If Ms. Morris can show she's stable, now employment housing clean drug tests, the judge may grant supervised visits. When's the hearing? 3 weeks, January 15th. You'll receive official notice by mail, but I wanted to give you a heads up so you could secure legal representation. I can't afford a lawyer. There are resources. Legal aid. I can send you a list. Marcus wanted to throw his phone through the wall. Instead, he said, "Thank you for the information," and hung up before his voice could crack. He stood in the hallway for a long minute, breathing through his nose, trying to push down the rage that was climbing his throat like bile. Then he walked back into the kitchen where Zoe was still bent over her homework, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in their lives. "Spaghetti's ready," Marcus said, his voice sounding almost normal. They ate dinner. Zoe talked about a boy in her class who'd brought a snake for show and tell, and how it had escaped and caused a lockdown until someone found it in the janitor's closet. Marcus nodded at the right times, made appropriate sounds of surprise and interest, and felt like he was watching himself from outside his body. After Zoe went to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his phone in his hand, and Rebecca Chen's list of legal aid numbers pulled up on the screen. He called 4. 3 went to voicemail. The 4th told him they had a 6-month wait list unless it was an emergency. "My ex wants custody of the daughter she abandoned. That sound like an emergency to you?" The woman on the phone sighed. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but unless there's imminent danger to the child, it doesn't meet our criteria for expedited services." Marcus hung up without saying goodbye. He thought about calling his mother, but she was in Tennessee helping his sister with her new baby, and the last thing she needed was more stress. He thought about calling Mrs. Chen from his old building, but what could she do except worry? His thumb hovered over Elena's number for a full minute before he pressed it. She answered on the first ring. "Marcus, everything okay?" "No." The word came out rougher than he intended. "No, everything's not okay." "What happened?" "Zoe's mother. She filed for visitation. There's a hearing in 3 weeks and I can't afford a lawyer, and legal aid has a wait list and I—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "I can't lose her, Elena. She's all I have." "You're not going to lose her. Where are you?" "Home." "I'm coming over." "You don't have to." "I'm already in my car. Text me your address." Elena arrived 20 minutes later in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. She looked more human than Marcus had ever seen her, and somehow that made it easier to fall apart when she walked through the door. "Tell me everything," Elena said, sitting at his kitchen table like she'd been there 100 times. Marcus told her. About Keisha leaving when Zoe was 3, about the years of silence, about the voicemail from family services and the hearing, and his complete inability to afford representation. Elena listened without interrupting, her expression growing harder with each detail. "What's Keisha's angle?" Elena asked when he finished. "I don't know. She's been gone 5 years. Why now?" "Does she have family in Atlanta?" "Her mother's here, lives in College Park. But they weren't close when Keisha and I were together." Elena pulled out her phone, typed something. "What's Keisha's full name?" "Keisha Marie Morris. Why?" "I'm having someone look into her. Employment housing, criminal records, social media. If she's got skeletons, we'll find them." "Elena, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." Her voice was steel. "You saved my life, Marcus. You gave me a second chance. Now I'm giving you one. Let me help." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to say this was too much, that she'd already done enough, but desperation killed pride faster than anything else. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thank you." Elena's expression softened. "You're not alone in this. Remember that." She left 30 minutes later, after making Marcus promise to forward her all the paperwork when it arrived. Marcus locked the door behind her and stood in his living room, feeling slightly less like he was drowning. The next morning, Marcus dropped Zoe at school and drove to the Spring Street site. The building was bigger than East Atlanta, 6 units spread across 4 floors, and the demo crew was already tearing into the first floor with sledgehammers and crowbars. Rick found him in what used to be a storefront. "You look like hell. Didn't sleep much. Woman trouble. Ex trouble." Rick nodded, understanding in the way men who'd been through divorces understood. "Need to talk about it?" "Not really." "Fair enough. Come look at this." Rick led him to the back of the building where the foundation was exposed. "We've got water damage. Whole back wall needs to be replaced before we can do anything else." Marcus crouched down, examined the crumbling brick and rotted mortar. "How much?" 40 grand. Maybe more if it's worse once we open it up." "Do it. I'll clear it with Elena." He texted her from the site. Her response came back immediately. Approved, whatever it takes to do it right. The day passed in a blur of decisions and problem solving, and Marcus was grateful for the distraction. But the moment he stopped moving, stopped thinking about load-bearing walls and electrical permits, his mind went straight back to Keisha and the hearing, and the very real possibility that he might have to share Zoe with the woman who'd abandoned her. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Marcus's phone rang. Elena. "I've got information," she said without preamble. "Can I come over?" "It's 10 o'clock. "Is that a no?" "Come over." Elena arrived 15 minutes later with a folder thick enough to be a novel. She spread it across Marcus's kitchen table, and he stared at page after page of information about a woman he'd once loved and now barely recognized. "Keisha's been in Charlotte for the past 4 years, Elena said, pointing to an employment record, working as a receptionist at a dental office. Before that, she was in rehab for 6 months. Meth addiction. Marcus's stomach turned. "She was clean when we were together. Relapse happens. But here's the thing. She's been sober for 3 years now. Steady employment, stable housing. No criminal record beyond a possession charge that got dismissed after she completed rehab. So she looks good on paper. She looks like someone who got her life together, which is going to make this harder." Marcus dropped into a chair. "Then what's the point of all this?" "The point is knowing what we're up against. But there's more." Elena pulled out another sheet. "Keisha's mother, Dorothy Morris, filed for bankruptcy 8 months ago. Medical bills. She's got stage 3 cancer currently in treatment." Jesus. "I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because I think that's why Keisha's coming back now. Her mother's dying, and maybe that made her think about family, about what she's missed, about trying to make amends." Marcus looked up. "You're defending her." "I'm trying to understand her. There's a difference." Elena sat across from him. "If we go into that hearing treating Keisha like a monster, we lose. The judge sees a mother who struggled, got help, and wants to be in her daughter's life. That's a sympathetic story. And what's my story, that I'm the father who stayed? That's supposed to be enough. Your story is that you're the only parent Zoe's ever known, that you've provided stability and love for 5 years while Keisha was getting her life together, that forcing visitation now without preparation could traumatize a child who doesn't even remember her mother." Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. "I need a lawyer who can actually make that argument. I called in a favor. Amanda Reeves, family law attorney. She's one of the best in Atlanta, and she owes me. She'll take your case pro bono." Elena. "Don't. Just say yes." "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. Thank you. Elena reached across the table, squeezed his hand once, then gathered up the folder. Amanda will call you tomorrow to set up a meeting. Until then, don't contact Keisha. Don't respond if she reaches out. Everything goes through lawyers now. What if she shows up at Zoe's school? She won't. She has to follow legal channels or risk losing any chance at visitation. But if she does, you call me immediately. After Elena left, Marcus sat at the kitchen table until midnight, staring at nothing, his mind racing through every possible outcome. Best case, the judge denied Keisha's petition, and she disappeared back to Charlotte. Worst case, he'd have to watch his daughter get confused and hurt by a woman who'd proven once already that motherhood was too hard. There was no scenario where everyone came out okay. Amanda Reeves called the next afternoon while Marcus was at the Spring Street site. He stepped outside into the cold away from the noise of demolition. Mr. Hayes, Elena filled me in on your situation. I've reviewed the petition and I think we have a strong case, but I need to ask you some hard questions. Go ahead. Did Keisha have any contact with Zoe after she left birthday cards? Phone calls? Anything? Nothing. Complete silence for 5 years. Did she pay child support? Never asked for it. Didn't want her money. That might work against us. The court could see it as you refusing her ability to contribute. Marcus's jaw clenched. I refused her money because I refused to give her any claim to my daughter. I understand. But we need to frame this carefully. Amanda's voice was calm, methodical. Did you ever try to locate Keisha? For medical history, emergency contact, anything? No. I figured if she wanted to be found, she wouldn't have disappeared. Okay, here's what we're going to argue: that Keisha voluntarily abandoned her parental role for 5 years, that she made no effort to maintain contact or provide support, and that sudden visitation without proper preparation could be harmful to Zoe's emotional well-being. We'll need character witnesses, people who can testify to your parenting and to Zoe's stability. I can get those. Good. We'll also need a child psychologist to evaluate Zoe. Standard procedure in cases like this. Marcus's chest tightened. She's going to ask why. I've never told her the details about her mother leaving, just said she had to go away. Then we need to prepare her. Gently. Age appropriately. Because if this goes to trial, she might have to talk to the judge. She's 8 years old. I know, and I'm going to fight like hell to keep her out of that courtroom. But you need to be ready for the possibility. They talked for another 20 minutes, Amanda asking questions and Marcus answering until his throat was raw. When he hung up, Rick was standing in the doorway. Everything okay? Just legal stuff. Anything I should know about? Marcus hesitated, then decided Rick deserved the truth. My ex is trying to get visitation with my daughter. Hearings in 2 weeks. Rick's expression darkened. The ex who left. That's the one. She got grounds. She got sobriety and a sob story about getting her life together. Rick spat into the dirt. System's a joke. Good fathers get screwed while deadbeats get second chances. Yeah, well, it is what it is. You need time off for court, you take it. Don't even ask. Thanks, Rick. That weekend, Marcus sat Zoe down at the kitchen table after breakfast. She had chocolate milk on her upper lip and was in the middle of telling him about a dream where she could fly. Baby, I need to talk to you about something important. Zoe's face got serious immediately, the way kids' faces did when they knew something was wrong. Am I in trouble? No, nothing like that. Marcus took a breath. Do you remember your mom? Your birth mom? Zoe's nose scrunched up, thinking. A little bit. She had curly hair, and she sang songs sometimes. That's right. Well, she wants to see you, to spend time with you. Why? It was the simplest question and the hardest to answer honestly. Because she misses you, and she wants to be part of your life again. Zoe was quiet for a long moment, her small fingers tracing patterns on the table. Where did she go before? She was sick. Not like a cold or flu, but sick in a way that made it hard for her to be a mom. So she went away to get better. Is she better now? I think so. Do I have to see her? Marcus's heart cracked. A judge is going to decide that, but no matter what happens, you're always going to live with me. That's not changing, I promise. Zoe climbed into his lap, even though she was getting too big for it, and wrapped her arms around his neck. I don't want things to change. I know, baby. Me neither. Monday morning brought the official court notice in the mail. Marcus read it 3 times, each word feeling like a nail in a coffin he was building for himself. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th at 9 in the morning. He was ordered to appear with legal representation and to provide any documentation relevant to Zoe's custody and well-being. Amanda called that afternoon. Did you get the notice? Yeah. Good. I'm filing our response today. I'm also requesting that any visitation be contingent on a psychological evaluation of both parents and a recommendation from a child therapist. How long does that take? Weeks if we're lucky, months if we're not. It buys us time, and it puts the burden on Keisha to prove she's ready for this. What are our actual chances? Amanda was quiet for a beat. Honestly, 60-40 in your favor. Maybe 70-30 if Keisha makes mistakes in her evaluation. But family court is unpredictable. Judges have a lot of discretion. So basically you're saying I could lose. I'm saying it's not a guarantee either way. But Marcus, I've seen your file. I've read the statements from Zoe's teachers, from your neighbors, from your employer. You're a good father. That counts for something. It counted for something. But apparently not everything. The week before the hearing, Elena invited Marcus and Zoe to dinner. Not at a restaurant, but at her penthouse, which made Marcus immediately suspicious. Why? He asked when she called with the invitation. Because Zoe asked if she could see where I live, and because you need a break from thinking about court. I can't stop thinking about court. Then come over anyway, 7 o'clock. I'll order pizza. Marcus almost said no, but Zoe overheard Elena's name and was suddenly bouncing on the couch begging to go, and he didn't have the heart to disappoint her. Elena's building was downtown, one of those glass towers that looked like it belonged in Dubai, not Atlanta. The doorman called up to announce them, and a private elevator took them directly to Elena's floor. When the doors opened, Zoe gasped. The penthouse was bigger than their entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that made Marcus dizzy. The furniture was modern and expensive-looking, but not cold. There were books on shelves, and plants in corners, and photographs on tables, real life, not just a showroom. "Holy cow!" Zoe whispered. Elena appeared from the kitchen barefoot in jeans and a sweater, her hair down. "Welcome. Fair warning, I have no idea what kids like, so I ordered 3 different types of pizza and got ice cream in case I messed up." Zoe's eyes went wide. "Can I see the whole place?" "Absolutely. Tour starts now." Elena led Zoe through the penthouse, pointing out the guest rooms and the balcony and a bathroom that was bigger than Zoe's bedroom. Marcus followed behind, feeling out of place and trying not to show it. They ate pizza on the living room floor because Zoe insisted it was more fun than using the dining table. Elena didn't argue, just grabbed plates and napkins and sat cross-legged on her expensive rug, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Marcus says you're really good at business," Zoe said around a mouthful of pepperoni. "I try to be. What are you good at?" "Science and math, and I'm okay at reading, but my teacher says I need to slow down because I skip words." "I did that too when I was your age. Still do sometimes." Zoe looked delighted. "Really?" "Really. My assistant has to check all my emails because I type too fast and miss entire sentences." They talked for an hour, Zoe asking questions about Elena's job and her apartment, and whether she'd ever met anyone famous. Elena answered every question seriously, never talking down to her, treating Zoe like she was worth listening to. Marcus watched them and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just his boss being kind. This was Elena genuinely enjoying his daughter's company, laughing at her jokes, asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually paying attention. After dinner, Zoe fell asleep on Elena's couch during a movie, her head on a throw pillow, her mouth slightly open. Elena and Marcus sat on the balcony despite the cold, both wrapped in blankets, the city spread out below them like scattered stars. "She's a great kid," Elena said. "She is. Which is why losing her would kill me." "You're not going to lose her." "You can't promise that." Elena turned to look at him, her face serious in the dim light. "No, I can't. But I can promise that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you don't. And I've got a lot of power, Marcus." "Why are you doing this? All of this?" "Because you saved my life. And because—" She started again. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone. My father died in his office alone, working on a deal that didn't matter. I didn't get to say goodbye. Didn't get to tell him I loved him one last time. You have Zoe. You get to say goodnight and good morning and I love you every single day. That's precious. That's worth fighting for." Marcus's throat was tight. "I don't know how to thank you." "Then don't. Just keep being the father she needs. That's enough." They sat in silence for a while, the cold seeping through the blankets, neither of them willing to go back inside and break the moment. Finally, Elena spoke again. "The hearing's in 3 days. Amanda called me earlier. Keisha's lawyer is pushing for immediate supervised visitation if the judge grants the petition." "How supervised?" "Social worker present. 2 hours a week at a neutral location. For 6 months, then they'd reevaluate." "That's 2 hours a week of Zoe being confused. 2 hours of me having to explain why this woman who abandoned her suddenly wants to play mommy." "I know, but Marcus." Elena's voice was gentle. "What if Keisha really has changed? What if she's genuinely trying to make amends? Then she should have tried 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, or any time before now." "You're right. But what if Zoe grows up and resents you for keeping her mother away?" Marcus turned to stare at her. "Whose side are you on?" "Yours. Always yours. But I'm also trying to prepare you for the fact that this might not go the way you want. And if it doesn't, you're going to have to figure out how to protect Zoe while also letting her have a relationship with her mother. That's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done." Marcus knew she was right, hated that she was right, but knowing didn't make it easier. They woke Zoe up around 10, and Marcus carried her to the elevator even though she was too big for it. She mumbled something about ice cream and Elena and fell back asleep against his shoulder. Elena rode down with them, walked them to Marcus's truck in the parking garage. "Thursday morning," she said. "I'll be there. In the courtroom. You're not doing this alone." "You don't have to." "I want to. Now go home. Get some sleep." Marcus drove home through empty Atlanta streets, Zoe's soft snoring filling the truck cab, and tried not to think about Thursday. Tried not to imagine the judge granting Keisha's petition. Tried not to picture Zoe's face when she realized her mother wasn't the fairy tale version she'd built in her head, but a real flawed woman who'd walked away and might walk away again. But it was like trying not to think about breathing. The fear was there with every inhale, suffocating and inescapable. Wednesday night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling until 2 in the morning, then got up and made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with Amanda's file spread in front of him. Character statements from Zoe's teachers. Pay stubs proving financial stability. Medical records showing he'd never missed a doctor's appointment. Photographs of birthday parties and school plays, and ordinary moments that added up to a life built on consistency and love. It should be enough. But family court didn't run on should. It ran on legal precedent and judicial discretion, and sometimes just the mood of whoever was wearing the robe that day. Marcus's phone buzzed at 6 in the morning. "Elena. You awake?" "Haven't slept." "Me neither. I'm picking you up at 8. We'll go to the courthouse together." "I can drive myself." "I know you can, but you're not going to." Marcus was too tired to argue. Elena's Mercedes pulled up at 8 sharp. Marcus kissed Zoe goodbye. Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch her for the day and climbed into the passenger seat, feeling like he was heading to his own execution. "You look terrible," Elena said, pulling into traffic. "Thanks, really needed to hear that." "I mean, you look like you didn't sleep." "Which you didn't. Did you eat?" "Coffee." Elena reached into the back seat and produced a paper bag. "Breakfast sandwich. Eat it." Marcus ate because arguing took energy he didn't have. The sandwich was good, some fancy place that used real eggs and cheese that actually melted, and by the time they reached the courthouse, he felt slightly more human. Amanda was waiting on the steps, dressed in a sharp suit that screamed competence. She shook Marcus's hand, nodded to Elena, and led them through security. "Keisha's already here," Amanda said as they walked down the corridor, with her mother and her attorney. "Don't make eye contact. Don't speak to them. Let me handle everything." The courtroom was smaller than Marcus expected. Wood paneling and fluorescent lights, and a tired-looking bailiff who barely glanced up when they entered. Marcus sat at one table with Amanda. Across the aisle, Keisha sat with a man in a gray suit and an older woman who must have been her mother, Dorothy. Marcus hadn't seen Keisha in 5 years. She looked different, thinner, older, her hair straightened and pulled back. She wore a dress that looked new, makeup carefully applied, and when her eyes met his for a split second, he saw fear there. Good. She should be afraid. Elena sat in the gallery behind Marcus, close enough that he could feel her presence like a shield at his back. The judge entered and everyone stood. Judge Patricia Okonkwo. According to the nameplate, a black woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on her nose and an expression that suggested she'd heard every custody story twice. "Please be seated." Judge Okonkwo opened the file in front of her. Case number 2024 FC 8891, Morris v. Hayes, petition for supervised visitation. Ms. Morris, you're requesting contact with your biological daughter after a 5-year absence. Is that correct? Keisha's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My client acknowledges her past mistakes but has worked diligently to address the issues that led to her departure. She's completed a 6-month rehabilitation program, maintained steady employment for 3 years, and is currently sober and stable. She's requesting supervised visitation to rebuild a relationship with her daughter." "Mr. Hayes, you're opposing this petition?" Amanda rose. "Yes, Your Honor. While we acknowledge Mrs. Morris's efforts at rehabilitation, we believe sudden reintroduction into the child's life without proper psychological evaluation and preparation could cause significant emotional harm. The child, Zoe, is 8 years old and has no memory of Ms. Morris. Mr. Hayes has been her sole custodial parent for 5 years, providing stability and consistent care." Judge Okonkwo looked between them. "Has Ms. Morris made any attempt to contact the child in the past 5 years? Keisha's lawyer cleared his throat. "No, Your Honor. My client believed that maintaining distance while she addressed her addiction was in the child's best interest." "And Mr. Hayes, did you attempt to locate Ms. Morris during this time? For medical history, emergency contact purposes," Amanda responded. "No, Your Honor. Ms. Morris voluntarily relinquished all parental contact and provided no forwarding information. Mr. Hayes had no way to locate her and no indication she wished to be found." The judge made notes. "I've reviewed the submitted materials. Character statements for Mr. Hayes are exemplary. Ms. Morris's rehabilitation records show consistent progress. This is not a simple case." Keisha's lawyer spoke again. "Your Honor, if I may, my client's mother, Dorothy Morris, is currently battling stage 3 cancer. This health crisis prompted my client to reevaluate her priorities and desire to reconnect with her daughter before it's too late." Judge Okonkwo's expression didn't change. "While I sympathize with Mrs. Morris's health challenges, this court's primary concern is the well-being of the child, not the emotional needs of the adults involved." Marcus felt a small surge of hope. "That being said," the judge continued, Biological parents have a constitutional right to contact with their children unless they've been proven unfit or dangerous. Ms. Morris's past addiction and abandonment are concerning, but her current stability suggests she's addressed those issues. The hope died. Here's what I'm ordering. Before any visitation is granted, both parents will undergo psychological evaluation by a court-appointed specialist. Additionally, Zoe will meet with a child psychologist to assess her emotional readiness for contact with Ms. Morris. These evaluations will take approximately 6 weeks. We'll reconvene on March 1st to review the findings and make a final determination. Keisha's lawyer started to object. Your Honor, 6 weeks is... 6 weeks is generous, counselor. Your client waited 5 years. She can wait 6 more weeks to ensure this process doesn't traumatize the child. Court adjourned. The gavel came down like thunder. Marcus exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. Amanda leaned over, her voice low. That's as good as we could have hoped for. The evaluations buy us time and put the burden on Keisha to prove she's ready. What if she passes? Then we deal with that in March. For now, you've got 6 weeks to prepare Zoe and strengthen your case. Across the aisle, Keisha was crying. Her mother had an arm around her shoulders, and her lawyer was talking rapidly in her ear. For a brief moment, Marcus felt something that might have been pity. Then he remembered Zoe asking why her mother left, and the pity evaporated. Elena stood as they filed out of the courtroom. She didn't say anything, just fell into step beside Marcus, her hand briefly touching his arm in silent support. They made it to the parking garage before Keisha's voice called out behind them. Marcus, please. Can we talk? Amanda immediately stepped between them. My client has no obligation to speak with you, Ms. Morris. All communication should go through legal channels. I just want to explain, please. Marcus turned, despite Amanda's warning look. Keisha stood 20 feet away, her mother beside her for support, mascara smudged under her eyes. You had 5 years to explain. Marcus said, his voice cold. You chose silence. I was sick. I couldn't. You were high. There's a difference. Keisha flinched like he'd slapped her. I know what I did was wrong. I know I can't take it back. But I'm better now. I'm sober. I have a job and apartment. I'm trying to build a life. Good for you. Build it somewhere else. Away from my daughter. She's my daughter too. Biology doesn't make you a mother. Showing up does. And you didn't show up for 5 years. Dorothy Morris stepped forward, her voice weak but determined. Mr. Hayes, I'm dying. I won't see next Christmas. My daughter made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but she's trying to make them right. Don't punish her for getting healthy. Don't deny your little girl the chance to know her mother before it's too late. Marcus felt Elena's hand on his back, grounding him. I'm sorry you're sick, ma'am. Truly. But your daughter's guilt doesn't obligate me to expose Zoe to someone who already proved she's unreliable. The judge ordered evaluations. Let's see what they say. He turned and walked away before anyone could respond. In Elena's car, Marcus dropped his head against the seat and closed his eyes. His hands were shaking. Elena started the engine but didn't drive. You handled that well, she said quietly. I wanted to scream at her. Tell her exactly what those 5 years were like. Every time Zoe asked about her mother. Every Mother's Day at school, when other kids made cards, and Zoe made one for me instead because she didn't have anyone else. Every nightmare when she woke up crying because she thought I'd leave too. But you didn't scream. You stayed calm and set boundaries. That's strength, Marcus. Doesn't feel like strength. Feels like barely holding on. Elena drove him back to his apartment. Mrs. Chen had Zoe at the playground, so the place was empty when they walked in. Marcus collapsed onto his couch, suddenly exhausted despite the early hour. Elena sat beside him. What do you need? I need this to be over. I need Keisha to go back to Charlotte and leave us alone. What if the evaluations come back in her favor? Then I figure out how to share my daughter with a stranger. And I pray Keisha doesn't break Zoe's heart the way she broke mine. Elena was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something from an outside perspective? Go ahead. Dorothy's dying. That's real. And Keisha's sobriety is real. She's not doing this to hurt you or manipulate Zoe. She's doing it because her mother's death is forcing her to confront what she lost. You think I should let her back in? I think you should protect Zoe above everything else. But I also think Zoe's going to ask questions when she's older, about her mother, about why she wasn't allowed to know her. And you're going to have to answer those questions. Marcus stared at the ceiling. I hate that you're right. I know, but someone has to say it. They sat in silence until they heard Zoe's voice in the hallway. Mrs. Chen's laugh following. Marcus stood up, straightened his shirt, plastered on a smile that almost looked real. Zoe burst through the door, her cheeks red from the cold. Daddy? We saw 3 dogs at the playground, and Mrs. Chen let me have hot chocolate. Sounds like you had fun. The best. Did you win in court? Marcus glanced at Elena, then back at Zoe. It's not about winning, baby, but the judge is taking time to make sure everyone's doing what's best for you. Does that mean I don't have to see her yet? Not yet. But we're going to talk to someone, a doctor who helps kids with their feelings. They're going to ask you questions about how you feel about your mom wanting to visit. Zoe's face got serious. What should I say? Whatever's true. There's no right or wrong answer. She thought about that for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Can Elena stay for dinner? Elena smiled. I'd love to, but I've got a meeting in an hour. Rain check. Promise. Promise. After Elena left, Marcus made dinner grilled cheese and tomato soup because comfort food felt necessary. Zoe chattered about the dogs at the playground, about a test she had tomorrow on multiplication, about anything except the thing hanging over both their heads. That night after Zoe was in bed, Marcus called his mother. How'd it go? She asked before he even said hello. Judge ordered evaluations. 6 weeks before another hearing. That's good, isn't it? Means they're being careful. It's a delay, not a win. His mother sighed. Baby, I know this is hard, but that little girl needs you steady. Can you be steady? I don't know, Mama. I honestly don't know. Yes, you do. You've been steady for 8 years. Through Keisha leaving, through money problems, through every single hard thing. You can do 6 more weeks. What if the evaluation says Keisha's ready? What if I have to watch Zoe get hurt? Then you pick her up and you love her through it, same as you always have. That's what parents do. We don't get to protect our kids from everything. We just get to be there when they fall. Marcus's eyes burned. I miss you, Mama. I miss you too. But I'm coming for a visit next month. We'll get through this together. After they hung up, Marcus poured himself a whiskey, the cheap stuff he kept for nights like this, and sat on his small balcony, watching Atlanta's lights blur through the bare trees. He thought about Keisha crying in the courthouse, about Dorothy Morris dying, about Zoe growing up and asking questions he didn't want to answer. Elena was right. This wasn't about what he wanted or what Keisha deserved. It was about Zoe, about giving her information and letting her make choices when she was old enough to understand them. But God, it was hard to think clearly when every protective instinct screamed at him to grab Zoe and run. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Marcus took a half-day off work, picked Zoe up early from school, and drove to a Bland medical building in Midtown. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, as she clarified immediately, was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an office full of toys, designed to make kids talk while they played. Zoe, I'm going to ask you some questions while we draw, okay? And your dad's going to wait in the other room so you can talk freely. Does that sound all right? Zoe looked at Marcus uncertain. It's okay, baby. Dr. Chen just wants to know how you're feeling. I'll be right outside. Marcus sat in the waiting room for 45 minutes that felt like 45 hours. He stared at magazines without reading them, checked his phone obsessively, tried not to imagine what Zoe was saying. When the door finally opened, Zoe emerged looking tired but okay. Dr. Chen gestured for Marcus to come back in alone. "How is she?" Marcus asked before the door even closed. "She's a very bright, emotionally intelligent child. She understands more than you probably give her credit for." "What did she say about her mother?" Dr. Chen chose her words carefully. "She has very few memories of Ms. Morris, mostly impressions, someone who sang someone with curly hair. She's curious but also anxious about meeting a stranger who has the title of mother. So she doesn't want visitation." "It's not that simple. Zoe wants to please you. She's aware of your stress about this situation, and she's protective of you. That's a lot of responsibility for an 8-year-old to carry." Marcus's gut clenched. "You're saying I'm putting pressure on her?" "I'm saying she's a child caught between two adults and she's trying to navigate emotions that are beyond her developmental capacity. My recommendation will be that if visitation is granted, it should be extremely gradual. Short meetings in neutral locations with a therapist present, and that both you and Ms. Morris undergo family therapy to learn how to co-parent without putting Zoe in the middle." "Co-parent? With a woman who walked out 5 years ago?" "I understand your anger, Mr. Hayes, but anger doesn't serve Zoe. What serves her is two adults who can put her needs above their history." Marcus left the office feeling worse than when he'd arrived. Zoe was quiet in the truck staring out the window. "You okay?" Marcus asked. She asked a lot of questions. "I know. Was it scary?" "A little, but Dr. Chen was nice." Zoe paused. "Daddy, do you want me to see my mom?" Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I want whatever makes you happy and safe." "That's not an answer." "Too smart. Way too smart." "Honestly, I'm scared. I'm scared she'll hurt you, or disappoint you, or leave again." "What if she's nice?" "Then I'll be glad you got to know her. But Zoe, listen to me. No matter what happens with your mom, you're stuck with me. Forever. That's not changing." She smiled at that. Forever. Forever and ever. Marcus's own evaluation was scheduled for Thursday. Dr. James Whitmore was younger than Marcus expected, mid-30s, with glasses and a firm handshake. "This evaluation will take about 2 hours," Dr. Whitmore explained. "I'll ask questions about your parenting style, your relationship with Zoe, your thoughts on Ms. Morris's petition. There are no wrong answers. I'm just trying to understand the full picture." The questions started easy. How long had Marcus been Zoe's primary caregiver? What was their daily routine? How did he handle discipline? What were his concerns about Keisha's involvement? Then they got harder. "Do you believe Ms. Morris is a danger to Zoe?" "Not physically, but emotionally. Yeah, I think a kid getting attached to someone who might disappear again is dangerous." "Has Ms. Morris given any indication she would disappear?" "She disappeared once. That's indication enough." "People change, Mr. Hayes." "Some people do. Some people just get better at hiding who they really are." Dr. Whitmore made notes. "Do you think you might be projecting your own hurt onto this situation? That perhaps you're opposing visitation, not just for Zoe's sake, but because you're still angry at Ms. Morris for leaving you?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "My feelings about Keisha don't matter. What matters is protecting my daughter." "But if your anger is influencing your judgment?" "My judgment is fine. My daughter was 3 years old when her mother walked out without a word. I'm the one who explained why mommy wasn't coming back. I'm the one who held her when she cried. I'm the one who's been there every single day since. So yeah, I'm angry. But that anger doesn't change the facts. Keisha abandoned her child, and now she wants back in because her mother's dying and she's feeling guilty. That's not about Zoe. That's about Keisha trying to feel better about herself." Dr. Whitmore wrote something down. Marcus couldn't tell if he'd helped or hurt his case. The evaluation ended with personality tests and questionnaires that felt designed to catch him in contradictions. Marcus answered honestly, even when honesty made him look bitter or unforgiving because lying wouldn't protect Zoe. Walking out, he called Elena. "How'd it go?" she asked. "I think I failed." "You can't fail a psychological evaluation." "Watch me. The doctor basically asked if I'm opposing visitation because I'm vindictive." "What did you say?" "That I'm protecting my daughter." "But I don't think he believed me." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, can I ask you something? And I need you to really think about the answer." "Go ahead." "If Keisha had never left, if she'd been a good mother for 8 years, would you want Zoe to know her?" "That's not a fair question." "It's the only question that matters. Because if the answer is yes, then maybe the problem isn't Keisha wanting contact. Maybe the problem is that you haven't forgiven her for leaving. And that's okay, you don't have to forgive her. But you do have to separate your feelings from what's best for Zoe." Marcus stopped walking. "Whose side are you on?" "Yours always. But being on your side means telling you the truth even when it's hard to hear. The truth is that I don't trust Keisha, and I don't think that makes me wrong. It doesn't, but it might make the judge grant supervised visitation anyway. And if that happens, you need to be ready to support Zoe through it instead of fighting it." Marcus hung up without saying goodbye. He sat in his truck for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the rage building in his chest. Everyone kept acting like he was the problem. Like his completely justified mistrust of a woman who'd abandoned her child was somehow unfair or vindictive. Nobody seemed to care that he'd been the one showing up, the one sacrificing, the one doing the actual work of parenting while Keisha was getting high in Charlotte. His phone rang. "Amanda. We need to talk about strategy," she said. "Keisha's lawyer just filed a motion requesting interim supervised visitation starting next week pending the evaluation results." "Can they do that?" "They can request it. Judge Okonkwo will likely deny it since she already ordered evaluations first. But it shows Keisha's lawyer is aggressive. We need to be prepared." "Prepared how?" "If the evaluations come back positive for Keisha, the judge will almost certainly grant some form of visitation. We need to start thinking about what terms we can live with." "I can't live with any of them." "Then you need to figure out how. Because if you fight too hard and lose, the judge might see you as obstructive and grant Keisha more access than if you'd been cooperative from the start." Marcus wanted to throw his phone through the windshield. Instead, he said, "Fine. What terms?" "Short visits. 30 minutes to an hour. Therapist present. Public location like a park or family center. No overnight stays. No unsupervised contact for at least 6 months. And if Zoe shows signs of distress visits, pause until she's ready to try again. And if Keisha doesn't follow the rules, then we file a contempt motion and use it as evidence that she's not ready for increased access." It was something. Not much, but something. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep again. He stood in Zoe's doorway, watching her breathe her stuffed elephant tucked under her chin, completely oblivious to the legal battle being fought over her future. He thought about Elena's question. Would he want Zoe to know her mother if Keisha hadn't left? The answer was yes. Of course yes. Every kid deserved to know both parents if possible. But that wasn't the reality they lived in. The reality was abandonment and addiction and 5 years of silence. And Marcus couldn't just pretend those things didn't matter, because Keisha had gotten sober and felt guilty. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Still awake." He called her back. "How'd you know?" "Because I'm awake too. Can't stop thinking about what I said earlier. About whether you've forgiven Keisha. I haven't, and I won't. That's fair. But Marcus, and I'm saying this as someone who cares about both you and Zoe. What if not forgiving her ends up hurting Zoe more than Keisha's absence did? That's not how could that possibly... Because if Zoe grows up watching you hold on to anger, she learns that's how you handle pain. By refusing to let go. By staying bitter. Is that what you want to teach her?" Marcus sat down on his couch, the phone pressed hard against his ear. "I don't know how to let it go, Elena. She destroyed me. I loved her, and she left like I meant nothing, like Zoe meant nothing. How do I forgive that? Maybe you don't. Maybe forgiveness isn't about Keisha at all. Maybe it's about you deciding that she doesn't get to take up space in your head anymore, that her choices don't get to control your present. Easier said than done. Everything worth doing is. They stayed on the phone for another hour talking about nothing and everything. About Marcus's childhood in Tennessee, about Elena's complicated relationship with her father, about how sometimes the people who were supposed to protect you ended up being the ones you needed protection from. When they finally hung up, Marcus felt slightly less alone. The 6 weeks crawled by with agonizing slowness. Marcus worked on the Spring Street project, watched it transform from wreckage to possibility. Rick's crew finished ahead of schedule, and Elena started talking about a third building bigger than the first two combined. "You're good at this," she told Marcus during a site visit. "Better than I expected. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I'm serious. I want you as a permanent project manager. Full benefits, competitive salary, the works." "Thought I already had that." "You do, but this is a promotion. More responsibility, more money. You've earned it." Marcus accepted because refusing would have been stupid, but the promotion felt hollow when he couldn't shake the anxiety about the upcoming hearing. Zoe had 2 more sessions with Dr. Chen. Each time she came out quiet and thoughtful, and Marcus didn't push her to talk about it. March 1st arrived cold and rainy. Marcus dropped Zoe at school, kissed her forehead twice for luck, and met Amanda at the courthouse. Elena was already there, sitting in the same seat as last time. She caught Marcus's eye and nodded once, a silent promise that he wasn't alone. Judge Okonkwo entered and Marcus's stomach dropped. This was it. The moment everything changed. Judge Okonkwo adjusted her glasses and opened the file in front of her with the kind of deliberate care that suggested she'd read every page 3 times already. The courtroom felt smaller than it had 6 weeks ago, the air heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. "I've reviewed the psychological evaluations submitted by Dr. Whitmore and Dr. Deere." The judge began, her voice carrying the weight of authority that came from decades of making decisions that changed lives. "Both evaluations are thorough and provide valuable insight into this situation." Marcus's hands were clenched so tight under the table that his knuckles had gone white. Amanda sat perfectly still beside him, her professional mask firmly in place. Across the aisle, Keisha looked smaller than she had in January. Her shoulders hunched like she was bracing for impact. Dr. Whitmore's evaluation of Mr. Hayes indicates a dedicated, consistent parent who has provided excellent care for Zoe. There are some concerns noted regarding Mr. Hayes's anger toward Ms. Morris and whether that anger might interfere with co-parenting, but overall, the evaluation supports continued primary custody. Marcus exhaled slightly. Amanda's hand moved to her notepad, writing something he couldn't read. Dr. Whitmore's evaluation of Ms. Morris shows significant progress in addressing her addiction. She's maintained sobriety for 3 years, has stable employment and housing, and demonstrates genuine remorse for her past actions. However, Dr. Whitmore notes that Ms. Morris's motivation for seeking contact appears to be partially driven by her mother's terminal illness, which raises questions about her long-term commitment. Keisha's lawyer shifted in his seat, but didn't interrupt. Dr. Chen's evaluation of Zoe is perhaps the most important piece of this puzzle. Zoe is a well-adjusted child who has formed a secure attachment to her father. She has minimal memory of Ms. Morris and expresses anxiety about meeting someone she perceives as a stranger. Dr. Chen notes that Zoe is also highly attuned to her father's emotional state and may be suppressing her own curiosity about her mother in an effort to protect him. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Was that true? Was Zoe lying to protect him? Dr. Chen recommends that if visitation is granted, it should be extremely gradual and always focused on Zoe's emotional well-being rather than the adult's desires. She also strongly recommends family therapy for all parties involved. Judge Okonkwo closed the file and looked up, her gaze moving between Marcus and Keisha. This is not an easy decision. On one hand, we have a father who has been present, consistent, and devoted for 8 years. On the other hand, we have a biological mother who made serious mistakes but has worked hard to address them. And in the middle, we have a child who deserves both protection and the opportunity to know her own history. Marcus's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Here's my ruling. I am granting Ms. Morris supervised visitation rights under the following conditions. Visits will be 1 hour in duration, once per week at a neutral family services center with a licensed therapist present. These visits will continue for 6 months, at which point we will reconvene to assess progress. If Zoe shows signs of distress, or if Ms. Morris fails to comply with any aspect of this order, visitation will be suspended immediately pending further review. Keisha started crying. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. Dorothy Morris, even frailer than she'd been 6 weeks ago, pressed a tissue to her eyes. Additionally, I am ordering family therapy for Mr. Hayes and Ms. Morris to learn effective co-parenting strategies. This therapy will begin immediately and continue throughout the 6-month period. Mr. Hayes, I understand your concerns and your anger, but this child deserves the chance to know her mother in a safe, supported environment. Ms. Morris, understand that this is your only opportunity. If you fail Zoe again, you will not get another chance. The gavel came down. Marcus sat frozen. Amanda was talking to him, her voice distant and muffled, like he was underwater. Elena's hand appeared on his shoulder from behind, squeezing once, grounding him. Marcus! Amanda's voice cut through the fog. We need to go over the logistics. He stood mechanically. Let Amanda guide him to a side room where they could talk privately. Elena followed, closing the door behind them. This is the best outcome we could have hoped for, given the evaluations, Amanda said. Supervised visits, short duration with built-in protections. If Keisha screws up even once, we can petition to end it. When does it start? Next week. The Family Services Center will contact you with scheduling. You'll bring Zoe, meet with the therapist briefly, then leave while Keisha visits. You won't be in the room. I'm supposed to just hand her over to a stranger. To a licensed therapist who specializes in reunification cases. Zoe won't be alone with Keisha, not for a second. Marcus dropped into a chair, his head in his hands. This is a nightmare. Elena sat beside him. It's not ideal, but it's manageable. And Marcus, the judge, said if Zoe shows distress, it stops immediately. You heard that right? I heard it. Doesn't make it easier. Nothing about this is easy, but you're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. Amanda gathered her papers. I'll send you the court order once it's processed. In the meantime, start preparing Zoe. She needs to know what's happening before that first visit. After Amanda left, Marcus sat in silence with Elena. The room felt too small, the walls too close. Say something, Marcus said finally. What do you want me to say? That this is wrong. That the judge made a mistake. That I'm right to be angry. Elena was quiet for a long moment. You are right to be angry. And the judge did what she thought was best for Zoe. Both things can be true. How am I supposed to tell her, hey baby, remember that mom who left you? She's back, and a judge says you have to see her. How does that conversation go? Honestly, gently, with a lot of reassurance that you're not going anywhere. Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. What if this destroys her? What if it doesn't? What if Keisha really has changed and Zoe gets to have a relationship with her mother? Isn't that worth the risk? Not if the cost is Zoe getting hurt. Marcus? Elena turned to face him fully. Zoe's going to get hurt in life. That's unavoidable. Your job isn't to prevent all pain. It's to teach her how to survive it, how to be resilient, how to take risks even when she's scared. You're modeling that right now, whether you realize it or not. Marcus met her eyes. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just someone who's made enough mistakes to recognize wisdom when I see it. And you're wiser than you give yourself credit for. They left the courthouse separately. Amanda's advice was to avoid any appearance of impropriety with Elena, though Marcus thought that ship had sailed months ago. He drove to Zoe's school, arrived an hour early for pickup, and sat in the parking lot, trying to figure out what to say. When Zoe climbed into the truck, she immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? Marcus pulled out of the parking lot, needing movement to have this conversation. The judge made a decision today. About your mom. Zoe's whole body tensed. Do I have to see her? Yes, once a week for an hour. At a place with a therapist who'll be there the whole time. What if I don't want to? Baby, I wish I could change this. But the judge said you have to try. If it's too hard, if you're scared or upset, we tell the therapist and the visits stop. But you have to try first. When? Next week. Zoe stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Will you be there? I'll be in the building, but not in the room. The therapist thinks it's better if it's just you and your mom. What if she tries to take me? Marcus's heart cracked. She can't. I promise. This is just a visit. You live with me. That's not changing. Ever. You promise? I promise. That night, Zoe barely touched her dinner. She went to bed early without being asked, and when Marcus checked on her an hour later, she was still awake, staring at the ceiling. Can't sleep? He asked from the doorway. I'm scared. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. Me too. Really? Really? But you know what? Being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're brave enough to do something even when it's hard. That's what Elena said. About you. Marcus smiled despite everything. Elena's pretty smart. Daddy. Zoe's voice was small. What if my mom doesn't like me? Oh, baby. Marcus gathered her into his arms. That's impossible. You're the most likable kid in the entire world. Your mom is going to think she won the lottery just being in the same room as you. But she left me before. She did. And that was her mistake, not yours. Nothing you did made her leave. Nothing you could have done would have made her stay. Sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt the people they love. But that's about them, not about you. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Do you think she's nice now? I don't know. But the therapist will be there to make sure you're safe. And if she's not nice, or if you're uncomfortable, you tell the therapist, and we stop the visits. Okay. Okay. Marcus tucked her in again, kissed her forehead twice, once for love, once for luck, and left her door cracked open the way she liked it. In the kitchen, his phone rang. Elena. How'd she take it? About as well as could be expected. She's terrified. And how are you? Furious, helpless, terrified. Take your pick. Want company? It's 11 o'clock. Is that a no? Marcus should have said no, should have maintained boundaries between boss and friend, between professional and personal, should have protected himself from getting too dependent on someone who lived in a different world. Come over, he said instead. Elena arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and Chinese takeout. They ate in his small living room, chopsticks, clicking, not talking about the hearing or Keisha or anything important. Just existing together in the quiet. Thank you, Marcus said when the food was gone and they were working on their second glass of wine. For what? For showing up every single time. You didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did. You saved my life, remember? That was one night. You've been saving mine for months. Elena set down her glass. Can I tell you something? And you can't read anything into it? You just have to let me say it. Okay. That night at the party when you saved me, I thought I was going to die. And my only thought was that I'd wasted so much time on things that didn't matter. Building an empire, making money, proving something to a father who was already gone. And then you showed up. This stranger who didn't care who I was or what I was worth. You just saw someone who needed help and you helped them. She paused, her voice getting quieter. You reminded me what actually matters. People, connection, showing up for each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So no, I don't think I'm saving you. I think we're saving each other." The space between them felt charged, dangerous. Marcus knew he should move away, should thank her and call it a night before they crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he admitted. "Good thing you'll never have to find out." Elena left around midnight, and Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind refusing to shut down. In 5 days, he'd have to take Zoe to meet her mother. In 5 days, everything could change again. The Family Services Center called Thursday morning. A woman named Janet with a kind voice explained that the first visit would include a brief intake session where Zoe would meet the therapist, then Keisha would join them for the hour-long visit while Marcus waited in a separate room. "Will I be able to hear what's happening?" Marcus asked. "No. These sessions are confidential to allow Zoe to feel safe expressing herself. But if there's any concern for her well-being, the therapist will intervene immediately and you'll be notified." It didn't make him feel better. Saturday morning arrived too fast. Marcus woke Zoe early, made her favorite breakfast chocolate chip pancakes, and watched her push them around her plate without eating. Not hungry. "My stomach feels weird." "That's nerves. It's okay to be nervous." "What if I cry?" "Then you cry. The therapist is there to help with exactly that." They drove to the center in silence. It was a squat brick building in a quiet neighborhood, playground equipment visible through a chain-link fence. Inside, the walls were painted cheerful colors and covered with children's artwork. It felt deliberately non-threatening, which somehow made Marcus more anxious. Janet turned out to be a black woman in her 50s with gray locks and a smile that reached her eyes. She knelt down to Zoe's level. "Hi, Zoe. I'm Ms. Janet. I'm going to be with you during your visits with your mom. My job is to make sure you feel safe and comfortable. If you need a break, or if you want to stop, you just tell me." "Okay." Zoe nodded, her hand tight in Marcus's. "Your dad's going to wait right down the hall in a room with magazines and terrible coffee. But if you need him at any point, I'll come get him. Deal?" "Deal." Marcus crouched down eye level with his daughter. "You've got this, baby. Be brave, be honest, and remember, I'm right down the hall. You're not leaving the building. Not for a second." Zoe hugged him so tight his ribs hurt. Then she let go and followed Ms. Janet down the hallway, looking back twice to make sure Marcus was still there. A different staff member led Marcus to a small waiting room with uncomfortable chairs and stacks of parenting magazines from 2019. He tried to read, tried to look at his phone, tried to do anything except imagine what was happening down the hall. 15 minutes passed, then 30, then 45. Marcus was about to demand an update when Ms. Janet appeared in the doorway. His heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. The visit just ended. Keisha's already left through the back entrance to avoid any conflict. Zoe's washing her hands and she'll be out in a minute." "How was it?" Ms. Janet chose her words carefully. "It was a first meeting. Awkward, emotional, but not harmful. Zoe held her own beautifully. We'll debrief next week after the second visit." Zoe appeared behind Ms. Janet, her eyes red, but not currently crying. Marcus immediately went to her, checking her over like she might be injured. "I'm okay, Daddy." "You sure?" "I'm sure." They walked to the truck in silence. Marcus buckled her in, started the engine and made it 3 blocks before Zoe finally spoke. "She cried a lot." Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Did that upset you?" "A little. She kept saying she was sorry. Ms. Janet said sometimes adults need to apologize, even when kids don't know what to do with the apology." "That's true. How do you feel?" "Confused. She looks like the pictures you showed me but older, and she sounds different than I remember. But also..." Zoe paused. "Also kind of the same? What did you two talk about?" She asked about school and my friends and what I like to do. Normal stuff. And she told me about Charlotte and her job and her apartment. She has a cat named Muffin." Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. Muffin. I know, right? Weird name for a cat. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Daddy, do I have to love her? No, baby. Love isn't something you have to do. It's something that grows when people show up for you over and over. Your mom's going to have to earn your love same as anyone else. Good, because right now I mostly just feel weird. Weird is okay. Weird is honest. That night, Elena called to check in. Marcus gave her the summary while sitting on his balcony, the Atlanta night cold enough to make his breath fog. So it didn't go terribly, Elena said when he finished. Define terrible. Zoe didn't have a breakdown. Keisha didn't say anything harmful. That's a win. Setting the bar pretty low. Sometimes that's all you can do. Elena paused. Marcus, I need to tell you something, and you're going to be angry, but I need you to hear me out. His stomach dropped. What? I had coffee with Keisha yesterday. Marcus stood up so fast, his chair scraped across the balcony. You what? Before you explode, let me explain. Her lawyer reached out to me through channels. Said Keisha wanted to talk to someone who knew you and Zoe, but wasn't legally involved. I agreed to meet her. Why the hell would you do that? Because I wanted to look her in the eye and see if she was genuine or if this was some manipulative game. Marcus, I went into that coffee shop ready to hate her, ready to find proof that she was using this situation for her own benefit. And she's broken. Genuinely, completely broken by what she did. She knows she can't undo leaving. She knows she can't be Zoe's mother in any real sense of the word. But she wants to try to be something. An aunt figure maybe. Someone Zoe can know without the pressure of replacing you. Marcus paced the small balcony. She told you that... She told me she wakes up every day knowing she destroyed the best thing in her life. That her sobriety is partially about being the person Zoe deserves to know. That her mother's dying and she can't face that without at least trying to make amends. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. And Marcus, she asked me to give you something. Elena's voice got softer. She wrote you a letter. Can I bring it by? I don't want to read anything Keisha has to say. You don't have to read it. But I promised I'd deliver it. What you do with it after that is your choice. Marcus wanted to say no. Wanted to refuse on principle. But Elena had been there for every hard moment of the past 6 months, and he trusted her judgment even when he didn't want to. Fine. Bring it by tomorrow. Thank you. After they hung up, Marcus stood on his balcony for a long time, watching lights in other apartments flicker off as people went to bed. Their problems temporarily paused by sleep. He envied them their rest. Sunday afternoon, Elena arrived with the letter in a plain envelope. She handed it to Marcus at the door and didn't come inside. Do you want me to stay while you read it? No. I need to do this alone. Call me if you need anything. She left, and Marcus sat at his kitchen table with the envelope in front of him unopened. It was thin, just a few pages. Keisha's handwriting on the front, his name in letters that used to be familiar, but now looked foreign. He almost threw it away, unread. Almost. But some part of him, the part that used to love this woman, needed to know what she had to say after 5 years of silence. Marcus opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages handwritten, the ink smudged in places like she'd been crying while she wrote. Marcus, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. I don't expect anything except maybe that you'll read this all the way through. I left because I was high and scared and convinced that Zoe would be better off without a mother like me. I told myself I was being selfless, that walking away was the kindest thing I could do. But the truth is, I was a coward. I chose drugs over my daughter, and I chose running over fighting. I've been sober for 3 years. The first year, I thought about calling every single day. But what would I say? How do you apologize for abandoning your child? There aren't words for that. There's nothing big enough to carry that weight. My mom got sick last year. Stage 3 cancer. The doctors say she has maybe 6 months left. And watching her die has made me face every choice I've made, every person I've hurt. Especially Zoe. I don't want to take her from you. I don't want to confuse her or hurt her more than I already have. But I need to try to be part of her life, even just a small part. Because someday she's going to ask about me, and I want her to know I tried to come back. That I didn't stay gone forever. I know you hate me. You should. I hate myself most days. But Marcus, you were always the best person I knew. The most honest, the most steady. You're the father Zoe deserves. I just want to be someone she can maybe know without it destroying the life you've built for her. If you can't forgive me, I understand. But please don't punish Zoe for my mistakes. Let her have this chance to know where she comes from, even if it's messy and complicated, and not what either of us wanted. I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving. For the years of silence. For coming back and making your life harder. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stay, and I'm sorry it took my mother dying to make me brave enough to come back. If I could go back and change everything, I would. But I can't. So all I can do is try to move forward and be someone Zoe doesn't have to be ashamed of. Thank you for taking care of her. Thank you for being everything I couldn't be. Thank you for loving her enough for both of us. Keisha. Marcus read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and sat at his kitchen table with his head in his hands. He wanted to be angry. Wanted Keisha's words to feel manipulative or self-serving. But they just felt sad. Honest and sad and full of regret that changed nothing but explained everything. His phone rang. His mother. How'd the first visit go? It went. Zoe seems okay. Keisha apologized a lot. And how are you? Marcus laughed hollow. I don't know, Mama. I got a letter from Keisha today. She's dying inside from guilt, and I'm supposed to feel something about that, but I don't know what. You don't have to feel anything. You're allowed to be angry forever if that's what you need. But anger's heavy, baby. At some point you might want to put it down. Not for Keisha, for you. Everyone keeps saying that, like forgiving her is the mature thing to do. I'm not talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about release. There's a difference. Marcus thought about that after they hung up. Release versus forgiveness. Maybe you could let go of anger without pretending everything was okay. Maybe you could stop letting someone's past actions control your present emotions without absolving them of responsibility. The second visit happened the following Saturday. Zoe was less nervous this time, more resigned. She went with Ms. Janet without looking back, and Marcus waited in the uncomfortable chairs, trying not to check his watch every 30 seconds. This time, when Zoe came out, she was carrying a small stuffed animal, a purple elephant. Where'd that come from? My mom brought it, said she remembered purple was my favorite color when I was little. Can I keep it? Marcus wanted to say no. Wanted to refuse the gift on principle. But Zoe was looking at the elephant like it was precious, and he couldn't take that away from her. Yeah, baby, you can keep it. That night, Zoe put the purple elephant on her bed next to her old one. Marcus noticed but didn't comment. The visits continued. Week 3, Keisha brought photos from when Zoe was a baby. Week 4, they made art together with Ms. Janet facilitating. Week 5, Zoe laughed at something Keisha said, and when Marcus picked her up, she was smiling. Good visit. She's actually pretty funny. She told me about the time she accidentally dyed her hair green trying to go blonde. It was really green, Daddy. Like cartoon green. Marcus felt something shift. Not acceptance exactly, but maybe the beginning of resignation. Maybe understanding that this was happening whether he liked it or not, and his job was to support Zoe through it. The family therapy sessions were harder. Once a week, Marcus and Keisha sat in a room with a therapist named Dr. Barnes and tried to communicate without yelling. The first 3 sessions were disasters, Accusations flying old wounds reopened both of them, crying by the end. But slowly, painfully, they started to find common ground. They both loved Zoe. They both wanted what was best for her. They both agreed that she needed stability and honesty, and adults who could be civil to each other. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Keisha said during the 8th session. "I'm just asking you to work with me. For Zoe." Marcus looked at her across the therapist's office. She was thinner than he remembered, gray threads in her hair. She didn't bother to hide exhaustion in her eyes that came from years of fighting demons he'd never fully understand. "I can do that," Marcus said finally. "For Zoe." It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even really peace. But it was a truce, and that was enough. The 6-month review hearing came faster than Marcus expected. Judge Okonkwo read through Ms. Janet's reports, Dr. Barnes's therapy notes, and Zoe's own assessment, written in careful 8-year-old handwriting. Based on these reports, it appears the visits have been beneficial for Zoe. She's expressed curiosity about her mother, asks questions, and shows no signs of distress. Therefore, I'm extending visitation for another 6 months. With a slight modification, visits can now be 90 minutes, still supervised at the family center or other approved locations. Keisha cried. Marcus felt numb. But Zoe, when he picked her up from school and told her the news, just nodded like she'd expected it. "So I keep seeing her. You keep seeing her? Okay. Can we get pizza for dinner?" Just like that. Moving on because kids were better at adapting than adults ever gave them credit for. That night, Elena came over. They sat on Marcus's balcony with wine and takeout, and for the first time in months, Marcus felt like he could breathe. "You did it," Elena said. "You survived." "It's not over." "No, but you survived the hardest part, the unknown. Now you know Keisha's not going to disappear. You know Zoe can handle the visits. You know you're strong enough to share her without losing her." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something, and you can't read anything into it? You just have to let me say it." Elena smiled. "That sounds familiar. That night you saved me from myself after the first hearing, when you showed up with wine and Chinese food and just sat with me. That's when I realized I was falling for you." The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and true. "Marcus, I'm not asking you for anything. You're my boss. You're way out of my league. You've got a life that doesn't include a single dad with baggage. I know all that. But I needed you to know that you're not just someone who saved my life. You're someone who made me want to keep living it." Elena set down her wine glass carefully. "You think you're out of my league? I know I am. Marcus Hayes, you are the bravest, most genuine person I've ever met. You saved my life without hesitation. You've rebuilt yours from nothing. You're raising an incredible kid alone. You faced down your biggest fear and came out the other side. So no, you're not out of my league. If anything, I've been terrified this whole time that I'm not good enough for you." Marcus stared at her. "That's insane." "Is it? You've got this whole complete life. Zoe, your work, your strength. What do I have? Money, a company, an empty penthouse. I've been showing up for you because being near you and Zoe makes me feel like a real person instead of just a name on a building." "Elena, I'm falling for you too, have been for months. But I kept telling myself it was inappropriate that you were my employee, that I'd be taking advantage. So I stayed quiet and helped from a distance and pretended I wasn't imagining what it would be like to be part of your family for real." Marcus reached across the space between them and took her hand. "So, what do we do now?" "I don't know. Figure it out. Carefully, honestly." "I can do that." Elena laughed, the sound bright against the Atlanta night. "We're really doing this. A billionaire and a project manager. A woman and a man who saved each other's lives and figured out they're better together than apart. I like that version better." They sat on the balcony until late, holding hands like teenagers, talking about everything and nothing. About how they'd tell Zoe carefully, slowly, making sure she understood nothing was changing, except that Elena would be around more officially. About how they'd handle work now that their relationship had shifted. About what the future might look like if they were brave enough to reach for it. When Elena finally left, Marcus stood in his doorway, watching her walk to her car, feeling something he hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope. Real, uncomplicated hope that tomorrow might be even better than today. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his apartment, the bigger one. Elena had helped him move into 3 bedrooms because Zoe needed space, and maybe someday there'd be reason for a 3rd room, and watched Zoe teach Elena how to braid hair. "You're doing it wrong. The middle strand goes over, not under." "How is there a right and wrong way? It's just hair." "It's science, Elena. Science." Elena caught Marcus's eye over Zoe's head and smiled the same smile she'd given him that night on his balcony when they'd stopped pretending they were just friends. Keisha was coming for her monthly visit. Later they'd graduated from the family center to supervised visits at Marcus's apartment. Ms. Janet still present but less involved. Dorothy had died 3 months ago, and Keisha had leaned on both Marcus and Elena to get through it. They weren't friends exactly, but they'd found a way to be in Zoe's life without destroying each other. It wasn't the life Marcus had imagined. It was messier, more complicated, full of moments that required grace he didn't know he had. But it was real, and it was his. And standing there watching his daughter laugh while the woman he loved struggled with braids, Marcus realized something important. Saving Elena's life at that party hadn't been the moment that changed everything. It had been the first domino in a series of moments, each one small, each one scary, each one requiring him to be braver than he thought possible. And those moments had led him here. To a family that didn't look like anything he'd planned, but felt more right than anything he'd ever known. "Daddy, come help. Elena's hopeless." Marcus crossed the room, put his hand on Elena's shoulder, kissed the top of Zoe's head, and thought about how sometimes the best things in life came from the moments when you stopped watching and started moving. When you wrapped your arms around a stranger and saved them. When you accepted help, even though pride told you not to. When you let people in, even though letting them in meant they could hurt you. When you chose love, even when fear screamed at you to run. That night, after Keisha's visit, after Zoe was in bed with both elephants tucked under her arms, Marcus and Elena sat on the balcony under a blanket, the city lights spreading below them like stars that had fallen to earth. "I've been thinking," Elena said quietly. "Dangerous." She elbowed him. "Serious thinking, about us, about the future. And I want this, all of it. The complicated co-parenting, the balcony talks, the hair-braiding disasters. I want to be part of Zoe's life for real, not just someone who shows up sometimes." Marcus pulled her closer. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, both of you. And I'm saying if you'll have me, I want to build a life together. Officially. Messily. Honestly." Marcus thought about Judge Okonkwo's words months ago about how Zoe deserved to know her own history. But she also deserved to see her future being built by people who chose to show up, who chose to stay, who chose love, even when it wasn't easy. "We'll have you," Marcus said. "Forever if you're brave enough. I saved a man's daughter's future. I think I can handle forever. I saved a woman's life. Then we're even. Not even close." Elena laughed, pressed her forehead to his. "Then I guess we'll just have to keep saving each other." And somewhere in the apartment behind them, Zoe slept peacefully, surrounded by stuffed elephants, and the sound of adults who loved her, learning to love each other. She didn't know yet that her small family was growing, that the woman who made her father smile was becoming something permanent. But she'd figure it out. Kids always did. And when she did, Marcus would be there to answer her questions honestly, the same way he'd answered every hard question that came before. Because that's what parents did. They showed up. They stayed. They loved through the mess. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they saved each other along the way.